once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, in Kansas, in Georgia, in Missouri, in Texas, Chicago, Illinois, in Arkansas, in California, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Canada, Fiji Island, in Mexico, in Spain, Africa, Kenya, Pakistan, Zambia, to the United Kingdom, to our brethren in Australia, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and also in Papua New Guinea, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, my dear brothers and sisters. This is our special episode number 25, just an hour exposition of the prophecy as the last final warning message just prior to the close of provision. And still, we want to finish our investigation concerning Revelation 11, verses 1 and verse 2. The first two verses in Revelation 11, which is a part of the subject on Revelation chapter 10, according to 2TG 14:16. And the focal point of the subject is pointing to the 144,000 living saints, the first fruits, as well as the second fruits, the great multitude on Revelation 7, verse 9. So let us begin 2TG number 15, on page 8 and page 9. 2TG number 15, pages 8 and page 9. Revelation 11, verse 1. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. The measuring of the worshippers is in reality the numbering of them. And so you see that following the Seventh-day Adventist movement, there is to be a numbering of its people. And as there is but one numbered company, the 144,000, Revelation 7, verse 3, the first fruits, Revelation 14, verse 4, the servants of God, Revelation 7, verse 3, it follows that they are the ones who are numbered, who escape, and also who are sent to the nations. Yes, they are the ones who finish the mystery of God as they bring all their brethren out of all nations. Revelation 7, verse 9, the second fruits. Verse 2, But the court which is without the temple, leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall be tread underfoot 42 months. The worshippers, the members of the church, the tribes of Israel, are to be numbered. But those who are to fill up the court, those of the Gentiles, are unnumbered. After this I beheld and knew a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and people, and tongues, stood before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, and palms in their hands. Revelation 7, verse 9. Then it says, 7 times 7, 49. Determine the year of Jubilee, the liberation of the people and of the land, the type of the kingdom complete. Besides any other significance, the 42 months being only 6 sevens, it signifies that the holy city, Jerusalem, will not be trodden down all the way up to the time of the antitypical Jubilee. The Gentiles are to be driven out of it before the mystery of God is finished, before the seventh angel begins to sound. 2TG number 15, pages 8 and page 9. So, let us connect track number 5. Track number 5, pages 110 and page 111, as well as 112. So, let's read the statement here. On track number 5, pages 110, 111, and 112. Verse 2, it says, But the court which is without the temple, leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. This is one of the most important subjects, or the subject in reality by which at this time we need to focus our attention. Now, let us read the commentary given by the Shepherd's Rod. But why leave out the court? Why not measure it also? For since it is a part of the building, it too must be symbolical of saints. Obviously, because it represents the great multitude which no man could number, measure, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues. Revelation 7, verse 9. The last who come from among the Gentiles. So, in this study, I would like to distinctly separate the term Gentiles and the term heathen. 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 So let us read again the statement here in track number 5, 110 and 111. It says, obviously because it represents the great multitude, which no man could number or measure, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues. Revelation 7, verse 9. The last who come from among the Gentiles. The court, in other words, is symbolical of the immeasurable, innumerable harvest of second fruits brought in after the measurable or numerable harvest of first fruits, the 144,000. It is not measured, meaning investigated, because it represents those among whom there are no bad to be cast out, for they are gathered in after the cleansing of the heavenly temple. Daniel 8 verse 14. After the judgment of the dead, after the separation of the bad from among the good in the church, as illustrated by the parable of the net, Matthew 13 verse 47 and 48. They are those who by name, my people, Revelation 18 verse 4, are called to come out of Babylon, and who, with no unclean among them, Isaiah 52 verse 1, come into the already purified and living church of God. Now, then it says, the 40 and 2 months, allowing 30 days to a month, and reckoning a day for a year, Ezekiel 4 verse 6, represent the 1,260-year prophetic period, 538 AD to 1798 AD. The Gentiles here mentioned are those who tread underfoot the holy city, the church, an act which calls our attention to the Master's prediction concerning the faith of the saints during this 40 and 2 months period. And they, the church, shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away from the promised land, captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Luke 21 verse 24, the time that the Gentiles go out of Jerusalem and the Israelites go in. Then it says, the occupation of the promised land by the Gentiles today was typified by the yesterday's Gentile occupation of it. And when ancient Israel returned from Egypt to the land of promise, the times of the Gentiles in those days were fulfilled. Likewise, now, when antitypical Israel, the 144,000 guileless servants of God, are sealed and taken to Mount Zion, there to stand with the Lamb, the times of the Gentiles in these days will be fulfilled. So, it is a long reading, brothers and sisters. But here we can notice that Revelation 11 verse 2 is connected by the prophet to the prophecy in Luke 21 verse 24. So we need to carefully study Revelation 11 verse 2 in connection with the prediction of Jesus Christ in Luke 21 verse 24. I would like to read again the statement on Bible commentary. So it says here, in 5 BC 1123 or 1123, it says, since to be repeated. Since to be repeated. It is concerning Luke 21. And in the verse quoted is Luke 21 verse 20. Luke 21 verse 20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Luke 21 verse 20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. We know that the shepherd's rod connect Luke 21 verse 20 to Zechariah chapter 1 verse 18 to verse 21. So we need to connect to the prophecy in Zechariah chapter 1 verse 18 to verse 21. So let us read Bible commentary again and let us pray that God would help us to comprehend completely this prophetic event. And according to 5 BC 11:2-3, it says, sins to be repeated. So that sins will be repeated again, according to the voice of inspiration. It says, after speaking of the end of the world, Jesus comes back to Jerusalem, the city then sitting in pride and arrogance, and saying, I sit a queen, and shall see no sorrow. As his prophetic eye rested upon Jerusalem, he sees that as she was given up to destruction, the world will be given up to its doom. The sins that transpired at the destruction of Jerusalem will be repeated at the great and terrible day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. 5 BC 11:2-3. So, the voice of inspiration is very plain that the destruction of Jerusalem, that sins will be repeated again. Or in other words, the prophecy or the parabolical prophecy in Luke 21, verse 20 to verse 24 is typological. And it will be repeated again in the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Remember, the destruction of Jerusalem took place in 70 AD. And that was the time when the Jewish people were keeping the Passover week. I would like to now, let's read the great controversy. Let me see if I could read that in the Shepherd's Rod. Although, historically, that was in 70 AD when Jerusalem was destroyed by Titus in 70 AD. Try to look at in the writings of B.T. Halder. 70 AD. Now, let me read to you the great controversy on pages 30 and page 31. Terrible were the calamities. It is in tract number 3, page 40. That was in 70 AD when Titus destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. It says, terrible were the calamities that fell upon Jerusalem when the siege was resumed by Titus. The city was invested at the time of the Passover when millions of Jews were assembled within its walls. So when was the occurrence, brothers and sisters, when the temple in Jerusalem had been completely destroyed? That was the time when the Jewish people were celebrating the Passover week. It says when millions of Jews were assembled within its walls. Now, let me read to you again the statement in 2TG, number 41, page 3. It says, current events, the Palestine situation, and how close the separation. 2TG 41, page 3, current events, the Palestine situation, and how close the separation. More particularly this year, the current events concerning the Palestine situation. In tract number 12, on page 53, saying current events that may fulfill prophecy. Tract number 12, page 53. Current events that may fulfill prophecy. But our particular object in view in this study is Jerusalem. It is concerning Jerusalem. Now, let me read to you first tract number 6 on page 33. So our study must be the book of Zephaniah, the book of Nahum, the book of Zechariah, the book of Isaiah the Gospel Prophet, together with Ezekiel and Daniel and the book of Revelation and the parable of Jesus Christ. Now here on tract number 6, page 33, it says, his vineyard desolate. And it shall come to pass in that day that every place shall be where there were 1,000 vines at 1,000 silver links. It shall even be for briars and thorns. Isaiah 7, verse 23. The fact that this vineyard, figurative of the church Isaiah 5 verse 7, wherein its vine was once worth a silver ling, has become a place for briars and thorns, shows that its husbandman has left it desolate, a type condition which Christ more fully projected in the following words. Matthew 23 verse 37 and 38. Therefore, Matthew 23 verses 37 and 38 is typological prophecy according to this reading. A type condition. It says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. That is, it has become a place whence the divine presence and glory have departed. And those are the very words that can be heard in the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So I would like to read here in the Great Controversy, page 33. Blood flowed down the temple steps like water. Blood flowed down the temple steps like water. Thousands upon thousands of Jews perished. Above the sound of battle, voices were heard shouting, Ikabod, the glory is departed. So the statement on track number 6, page 33, it says, it has become a place whence the divine presence and glory have departed. On that Passover week, on 70 AD, when millions of the Jews are gathering in the temple within its walls, the destruction occurred. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that that event is typological. In the writings of Sister White, it says that that sin will be repeated again. When? At the great and terrible day of the Lord in a more fearful manner. 5 BC, 1123. Even more fearful manner. And that is the reason why we are studying this prophetic event. Current events concerning the Palestine situation. 2TG 41, page 3. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the subject matter is the antitypical Passover, by which on that antitypical Passover, the sins will be repeated again. Because type and antitype should exactly fit and perfectly match. Answerer number 3, page 23. 1SR Packet Edition, page 73. And also Great Controversy, 399. These types were fulfilled not only to the event, but as well as to the time. If the type Jerusalem had been destroyed on 70 AD, when the Jewish people were assembled together to celebrate the Passover week, therefore the antitype must also be during the antitypical Passover week. Such destruction will be occurred. Now, let's read again the statement here in 2TG 41, page 3. Current events, the Palestine situation, and how close the separation. I have been asked to give a study on current events, on the Palestine situation, and on the separation caused by the slaughter that is forecast in Ezekiel's vision. Then he says, I wish that I could tell you all you want to know. But I cannot say how soon the separation, the purification of the church, volume 5, page 80, will take place. God alone knows the time. All I know is that it cannot take place before we prepare the way, before our God-given work in connection with Ezekiel 9 is done. Then it will come to pass that the Lord will suddenly come to His temple, the church, and purify the sons of Levi, the ministry. Malachi 3 verses 1 to 3. But those who receive not the mark will fall under the slaughter weapons of the angels, as did the unfaithful firstborn in the night of the Passover in the land of Egypt. Now, do not forget that there are two slaughtering. So I would like to read again the statement here in the Old Symbolic Code. Let's read the Old Symbolic Code. It says here, 3 Symbolic Code, number 1 on page 8. 3 Symbolic Code, number 1, page 8. Therefore, as there are two separations, there is a double fulfillment of Ezekiel's slaughter. One in the church before the close of provision, and the other in the worldly churches after the close of provision. 3 symbolic code. Number 1 on page 8. So, there is a double fulfillment of Ezekiel's slaughter. The first slaughtering is before the close of provision. But the second slaughtering is after the close of provision. The close of provision mentioned here cannot be the general close of provision. Otherwise, we'll be saying that after the general close of provision, there is still slaughtering. No, the general close of provision throughout the whole world. The destruction is not slaughtering, but rather the 7 last plagues, the literal 7 last plagues. But the close of provision mentioned here is the close of provision of all Sabbath keepers. The first slaughtering takes place before probation close to all Sabbath keepers. But the second slaughtering takes place after the close of provision of all Sabbath keepers. The first slaughtering is only pertaining to all firstborn sons. And that is why the shepherd's rod plainly told us that on that slaughtering, only the firstborn sons were in danger. Let's read 1 SR Pocket Edition on page 55 and page 56. The Passover too, in which perished all the firstborn of men and beasts that were found in dwellings which had not the blood on the doorpost, forspoke an antitypical Passover, in which all who are left without the mark, because of not sighing and crying for the abominations in their midst, will surely fall under the slaughter weapons of the angels. Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 2. Then it says, when will this come to pass? The time unquestionably reveals the time through the fact that only the firstborn were in danger. So in that slaughtering, the only people that will be slain, the only people that will be destroyed are those who are in the ministry, the firstborn. Because according to 1 SR, it says, page 96, 1 SR page 96, the firstborn, a symbol of a class of priesthood, a representation of Ezekiel 9 verse 6, last part, the ancient men that were before the house. And remember that slaughtering is only in the land of Egypt. Now, the voice of inspiration, very plain, that the firstborn, it is a symbol of class of priesthood, those who are in the ministry. So, the first slaughtering, the only ones who were in danger, according to our reading in 1 SR Pocket Edition, page 55 and 56, are only the firstborn, those who are in the ministry. I remember the statement in 2 SR on page 169. It says, in that night, wherever the blood appeared on the doorpost, the firstborn, whether male or female, perish not. Just so now, those who received the seal have applied the blood on the doorpost forehead. And what is the seal? The present truth. In 1 SR page 28, it says, according to these scriptures, which are plainly stated, we must conclude that the saints of God are sealed with present truth in all ages. And whatever that present truth is, that is the seal. And of course, concerning the 144,000 living saints, it must be the present truth under the seventh seal. That is the only seal that concern the living. It says in 2 SR 202, but the seventh sealing period, being the last, must concern the living. Brethren, I am not weary to remind always the statement in volume 1, 190. Dear friends, do not deceive your own condition. We cannot deceive God. We need to face the reality before everything is too late. The shepherd's rod plainly told us, it says here, Testimonies volume 1, 190, dear friends, it says, 2 SR page 18, but though it possible to deceive men, we can never impose upon God, for He knows what is in the heart. Or in other words, brethren, for example, me of myself, as well as the Laymans movement, if the present truth under the seventh seal was not entrusted to us by God, and then we presumptuously believe that the present truth is within our borders, while in reality, we are destitute of present truth, then we are only deceiving our own selves. We are only fooling our own selves. And we cannot deceive God. In 2SR page 95, it says, a hypocrite may hide his sin from the eyes of others and sometimes from his own conscience, but can never impose upon God. But can never impose upon God. I would like to apply that statement, brothers and sisters, that we can shout to the whole world and continually pretend like the Jewish people, saying that the present truth are within our borders, while in reality, we are destitute of the present truth under the seventh seal. We are only deceiving our own selves. The chairperson says, there is a red line. There is a boundary line. It says here in 2SR page 98, 2SR page 98, people have come to suppose they can do most anything under the guise of Christianity and get away with it. To receive the seal of the living God, no, it is not just to sigh and cry. I think every movement is sighing and crying. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is sighing and crying. Where? To the Sunday keepers. That's what they did. The non-shepherd's rod reformers, they were also sighing and crying in the mother church. But according to the voice of inspiration, sighing and crying without the present truth is not sufficient. That's why here in 1SR page 31, it says, speaking of the 144,000, volume 5, page 210 to 211 says, these sighing, crying ones had been holding forth the words of life, a message. Who are they? The 144,000 living saints that will receive the seal of the living God in their foreheads. No, they are not just sighing and crying, but they were sighing and crying while holding the words of life, the spirit of life. In 2 symbolic code, number 5 and 6, on page 9, it says,
as long as you keep wavering on present truth, your sighing and crying will be too feeble and insufficient to place the seal of God in your forehead.
As long as you keep wavering, or in other words, you did not focus your attention and you did not investigate closely if the present truth is still in your border. If you are holding the present truth while sighing and crying without the present truth, it is too feeble and insufficient to place the seal of God on our foreheads. You need to ascertain clearly first if the present truth under the seventh seal is in our own borders. And do not fool our own selves, brothers and sisters. We are only deceiving our own selves. Now, let's go back again to 2SR page 98. It says, people have come to suppose they can do most anything under the guise of Christianity and get away with it. Under the guise of Christianity. Or because you are performing good works and you are sighing and crying, then you are already satisfied. But the voice of inspiration says, people have come to suppose they can do most anything under the guise of Christianity and get away with it. God will let them continue their course until they, like Belshazzar, have passed the boundary line of divine grace.
And then He will call them to account. There is a boundary line of divine grace.
Then God will call them to account. Here in 2SR page 169, let us read again. It says, in that night, wherever the blood appeared on the doorpost, the firstborn, whether male or female, perish not. Just so now, those who received the seal have applied the blood on the doorpost, forehead, and as the firstborn of both classes, those who died and those who did not, were a type of the present priesthood ministry. Evidently, the type points forward to a ministry in the antitype made up of both sexes. The firstborn who died represents the class that shall fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men, and the firstborn who escaped from death represent the class that shall receive the mark of the men with the writer's inkhorn and pass from death to life. Thus the firstborn who lived and passed through the Red Sea are a type of the 144,000. 2SR page 169. So it is very important, brethren, that we need to understand the antitypical Passover. And it says here on 2TG 41, on page 3, I am, however, certain that God will not keep us ignorant of the things we ought to know. If it becomes necessary for us to know ahead of time the day and hour of the purification of the church, the antitypical Passover, we will be told. Yes, we shall know at least as much in advance as Moses knew about the Passover in his day. Remember the statement, the information that will be given by God to His people, those saints that will no longer to taste death, is in much advance than in the days of Moses. And that promise is now fulfilling this year because through the Spirit of Christ, the full information concerning the antitypical Passover by which the culmination of the Palestine situation, brothers and sisters, such full information had been given by God to His people for one purpose. According to 11 Symbolic Code, number 8, on page 3, it says, God has revealed the 42-month prophecy to us for no other purpose than that we be made to realize that we individually have no time to lose in cleaning ourselves up with the provisions He has given us. No time to lose in getting our divinely appointed work done in the church, and no time to lose in setting our own houses in order. When God's people need more information for their own good, the Lord will not withhold it from them. 11 Symbolic Code, number 8, page 3 and 4, plainly indicating that the complete unfoldment of the 42 months prophecy on Revelation 11, verse 2, Luke 21, 20 to verse 24, Zechariah 1, verse 18 to verse 21, with the book of Zephaniah and book of Nahum, will be bestowed by God the complete understanding before probation closes. Because the purpose of such revelation is we should not waste our time in cleaning up our own selves. Second, we need not to lose our time to share this message to all other people, sighing and crying. And we should not waste our time in setting our own houses in order. We will continue this subject tomorrow, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you. Have a beautiful, wonderful evening.